How many people have had miracles this week?
Yep.
That's good. How many people have had miracles this year?
Yep.
Last 10 years? So everybody's had miracles. 3 principles are encapsulated within the Shabbat rest and renewal cycles that we just read about. On a weekly basis, we celebrate the 7th day as a day of rest. The 7th day is literally that. Every other day of the week in Hebrew is numbered, not named. So you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the 7th day is called Shabbat. It's the only one with a name. All the others are just numbers. It's a day of rest and rejoicing, and every 7 years, the Shabbat principle is applied to the land in the same way. When we spend 6 years planting and reaping, followed by a year of Shabbat rest, after gathering enough to cover years 3 to 6, covering 3 years from the 6th year to the 9th year. And then finally we count 7 times 7 years, 7 times 7 Shabbats, and we follow the Yovel principle in the 50th year. Just as at the moment we're counting the Omer, and it's 7 times 7 Shabbats, and at the end of it all, on the 50th day, we will celebrate Shavuot. So we count 7 times years, follow the Yovel principle, and in the 50th year, the Shofar announces Jubilee, or Yovel. When enough is to be gathered to last 3 years, 49th, 50th, and 51st. And what that means basically is that the 24 out of the 51 years were supplied by super harvest years. Restoration takes place and all debts are wiped. All inheritances are redeemed as they come home to the land allocated to them. It's the prodigal, but just done in a different way. The prodigal comes home in the Yovel. And no matter what they've done, no matter what's happened, their land reverts back to them and all debts are forgiven. 1948 was a Yovel year. 1948 was a year of Jubilee. And 1948 is when Israel was restored as a nation officially. There's never been a time in Israel where there weren't Jews in Israel. This is what people forget and they say, oh, they came back. Yeah, a lot of them come back, but there's always been pockets of Jewish people living in Israel. There's never been a time when there hasn't. All that happened in about the 1880s and the 1900s, a lot of them started to come home and carried on and built up things. The kibbutz were built long before 1948. The land was cleared, the swamps were drained long before 1948. All 1948 happened was the UN finally agreed to let them have a small portion of the land that Britain was supposed to give them. That wasn't their land. But when the Balfour Declaration was declared, they were given a piece of land. The British were given the protectorate of it by the United Nations, or the equivalent of it then. And they suddenly decided to give 2/3 of it away, and they still wouldn't give the other third to Israel. It wasn't their position to decide whether or not to give it to them. It was already ours. So, in 1948 was a Yovel. We came back to our land, inherited what we were meant to inherit, and all debts were cleared. And even though much of the land had been farmed continually, it was a restoration of inheritance. 50 years later, in 1998, a Yovel should have been proclaimed, but a secular Israeli government ignored it. But Ezekiel saw the boundaries in advance and prophesied the boundaries in advance. And I think it's either a 5 or a 10 aggregate coin. It's one of the smaller coins anyway. It actually has the outline of what they call Greater Israel. And Greater Israel is that. And if you look at it, it's no wonder a few Arab nations get a bit touchy, because it swallows up all the stuff around Iran and Iraq and all up there and right the way down to Egypt. There's a big piece of land out there that we've never inherited. Even Shlomo never inherited all of the land, never occupied all of that land that's promised him here.
What coin is it on?
Hmm?
What coin? What coin?
It's a 5 aggregate or a 10 aggregate. It's one of the small things like a 5 or a 10 cent piece. It's one of the copper coins. And on the back of it, it's actually got the outline of Greater Israel. And the Arabs don't like spending those coins. They don't like looking at them. I've got some at home. I'll bring one in one day and show you what it looks like.
Are you recording here? Recorder on? Are you recording?
Thank you. Derelict of duty. Right. 2048, a spiritually restored Israel will get another opportunity to be obedient and therefore be blessed and hold the Yovel. And whether they do it or whether Yahweh sends Yeshua to come and do it, it will happen. Remember what happened when they didn't observe the Yovels? They didn't observe the 70-year Shabbat rests. That's when they were taken out of the land. And they were taken out for long enough for all those Yovels and all of those Shabbat rests to actually happen, and the land was just rested for all that time. So it got its rest one way or another. And it's the same with us. So Vayikra, chapter 25, 23 to 28, as we've read, is the key. But we have all these so-called powerful people rushing around trying to divide things up and impose a so-called land for peace solution based on fatally flawed rhetoric and ignored reality. Over 23 years it have produced nothing but increasing violence, chaos and heartache. And every president that comes along, they're going to be the one that fixes it. Obama was the one that had enough and he was going to fix it once and for all. How's he doing? No different than anybody else. Because he's poking his nose somewhere where he doesn't even realise who it is he's up against.
No.
These arrogant experts are skating on the brink of an extremely fragile and dangerous wafer-thin ice. And they will continue to reap the destruction and judgment they've been sowing, as promised in Yahweh's word. Have you seen how many weather freak storms and fires and everything you could possibly imagine and sinkholes are happening in America? There, no land in the world is suffering as many weird storms and extreme and violent storms as America right now. And sinkholes and bushfires and everything you can possibly think of. They are under judgment. So chapter 26 deals with carved statues or any carved stones that people bow down to and worship. I hope there's no Catholics here because I'm about to upset you. Multitudes of idols and the many religious groups in the land will face the consequence of ignoring this statute, as will all the nations of the earth. And when it happens, it will be a sign, a wonder, and a mighty work. You remember what happened to the Philistines? They had their God stood there. They stood it up the first time. The second time, he took its head off. And all of these people around the world that are bowing down to saints, the statues and grottos and you name it, they're carving them and bowing down to them, and they're worshipping trees and they're worshipping animals and they're worshipping everything you can possibly think of. They're going to be in big trouble.
Even the cross in Christianity is an idol.
Of course it is.
Made by human hand, and people bow down before it.
Yes, they do. I agree. Particularly when they nail the dead guy to it. You know, the Italian one. I don't have any problem with crucifixes because they've got either dead Italians or dead whatevers, but Yeshua's nowhere near. I've never seen a Jewish boy on the cross yet, so it can't be him. In the Brit Hadashah, or the New Testament, these 4 Greek words are principally used to designate miracles. 1, semeion, or sign, i.e. an evidence of a divine commission, evidence of a divine message. And I've put a whole bunch of scriptures that you can look at later. A token of the presence and working of God and the seal of higher power. This is their definitions. Second, tirata, which means wonders, wonder-causing events, portents, producing astonishment in the beholder. Number 3, dunamis, mighty works, the works of superhuman power. Not by power, not by might, but by my spirit, says the Lord. It's evidence of a new and higher power. And then finally, erga, or works, the works of him who is wonderful in working. Miracles are seals of a divine mission that's not limited by fixed laws of matter or mind, beyond man's capabilities or power. Where miracles are, Yahweh is. The word miraculous is actually a fairly modern phenomenon, used to establish cults of saints and shrines in Europe. The word miraculous actually is a Catholic word, and it denoted all of the cults of the saints and the shrines in Europe, starting around about 1500. And what they gathered was tens of thousands of testimonies recorded by pilgrims, a practice that's still worth a small fortune to certain religious sites. There are religious sites around the world that make an absolute fortune. I'm not talking about thousands, I'm talking about millions out of the pilgrims that come through, where desperate people look to dead virgins, saints, and various bizarre physical objects instead of Yahweh to channel their healings and miracles. In fact, recently, 2 new saints have been created. Both of them are former popes that have been canonized or made saints for the healings that are attributed to answering prayers to or through them. One of them has been made a saint purely because one woman prayed to him about 5 or 6 years ago or whatever, and she said she got healed, and that's enough to make him a saint. Many put miracles and healing together. Healing is a miracle, but a miracle isn't necessarily a healing. They're very different. An ear to hear or discernment is absolutely essential to accurately follow Yahweh's instructions. And don't forget, we're talking about somebody whose ministry this is. The ministry of miracles, the ministry of healings. For some strange reason, it's usually only evangelists that seem to be attributed the gift of healing, which is not true. There are different ministries that produce healing in different ways. Miracles have got absolutely nothing to do with it. An ear to hear or discernment is absolutely essential to accurately follow Yahweh's instructions. The first being, do you want me to pray for this person or situation? And it's absolutely crucial when you're ministering. The first thing you do is ask Abba, do you want me to pray for this person? If you want me to pray for them, how? And you'd be surprised, you'd think, well, it's obvious, of course he wants me to pray for them. Not necessarily. I've had lots of people, and it's obvious they need prayer, and he said no. You're obviously going to deal with it in a different way. It's arrogant to assume that you can just make your own mind up. Is it all about the person doing the praying? All the people stood up there doing the praying. Oh, aren't they wonderful? Oh, aren't they great? Aren't they, the big spiritual heavies that have come from overseas? Isn't it amazing? For some strange reason, if you come from overseas, it makes you much more powerful than the people here. And yet the people going from here to their country are treated the same way. Isn't that amazing? You obviously pick up something in the journey.
The prophet is not without honor.
Except in his own land,
Yeah.
his own town. You try to get some honor with your kids, wouldn't you? To them, you're just dad. It doesn't make any difference what you do or don't do. So you pray and ask if he wants you to, and if so, how. And the person doing the praying, or is it their trust or lack of it? Or the person being prayed for, their trust or lack of it? Yeshua always asked them what they wanted, even when it seemed blatantly obvious at times. He'd see a deaf man and he'd say, what do you want? What do you want? What are you seeking? Because he knew. We've done it before. We've been involved with deaf groups that have been part of our congregation. And they said they get sick of going up there and everyone wants to pray for their hearing. And they've gone up because they've got a headache. Don't assume just because of what you see. Ask. Ask them, ask him. And it's amazing how many times as well people come up and say, I need prayer for this. And I ask Yahweh and he says, no they don't. They need prayer for this. I want you to deal with the root, not the fruit. If you keep praying for fruit, there's always going to be fruit. They'll come back to you with more fruit every week. You need to get to the root of the thing. You need to nick it off. Or ask him to. Heart attitude is crucial when you're ministering. Hearing from the Father is essential. If you haven't heard it from him, then you're just using words. Even Yeshua said, I don't say anything, I don't speak anything that I haven't first heard from the Father. He didn't make it up as he went along. It's crucial. Anything else is just sheer arrogance and presumption on our part. And in actual fact, some problems are way beyond our trust levels. You remember when they came to him and they said, when he'd been up the mountain, and they said, we can't deal with this. They said, how long do I have to put up with you guys? It's because your trust level's not there. Because your trust level's not. It's no problem. You're not doing the healing. You just have to be able to trust enough. And believe enough because you trust. But there are some situations where you're a bit out of your depth. But if your trust's there, he will still work through you in that situation. He builds confidence in us when he allows us to share in one of his miracles. Isn't that nice of him?
Yes.
He can do the miracle on his own, he doesn't need us. But he allows us to share in it. And it builds our confidence, it builds our trust. It certainly builds trust in the person being prayed for. It's about making a way where there is no way humanly or physically possible. And so many times when I pray in a situation, that's my prayer. Please make a way where there is no way. It's as simple as that. Moshe knew all about that. He had the enemy behind him. He was hemmed in at the sides. And he had a great big ocean in front of him. Imagine how much trust and faith he had. It was like, if you don't make a way, there is no way. We're either going to be slaughtered or drowned. Either way, I'm not happy. And you're telling me to stick a stick out?
But he must have. He must have.
He did.
Trust.
Between the ocean and the Egyptian army, as they would say back then.
It was in full flood. Yes.
Remember always, he's meeting the need of the person asking, not mine. When I'm stood up there praying for somebody, he's not meeting my needs. It's not about me. It's always about the person up the front that has a need. They are the most important person at that time. Because they're the ones that are going to receive. The sense of joy and trust generated by a healing simply gives me more confidence to intercede for someone else. And remember, it's not always instantaneous. We want everything now. Everything's disposable, everything's instant. I want it now, fast food, you know. I can't wait half an hour for a real meal to be cooked. Slam a burger on, sear it, burn it, and give it to me. And we're like that with prayer sometimes. If it's not instant, it didn't happen. We're looking for signs and wonders. Remember it talked about the Greeks look for signs and wonders. We're not supposed to be looking for signs and wonders. We're supposed to be looking for a relationship. And out of that relationship comes healing and miracles. But the miracle happens when there is no way. He makes a way where there is no way, physically. I always like it when we get to the end of our tether and everybody says, there's nothing I can do for you. And I think, great, I know somebody who will. It's not always instantaneous. It can sometimes be gradual. And sometimes he wants changes in a person's behaviour and lifestyle as part of the package. Sometimes it's gradual because he wants to teach them as he restores. Sometimes it's because something is on the way that he wants to deal with first to allow them to be open to whatever he does. Because he knows if he heals them instantaneously, they'll go away and not come back. It's like, oh, I've got what I want. I've seen it. We've prayed for guys that have had heart surgery. 3 weeks later, they're back in the meeting. Totally restored. 3 weeks later, they're out and they never come back. They've got the healing. Why do they need to come to meetings? It's a lack of gratitude. That's what I talk about, an attitude of gratitude for one reason, because people remember it. But that's what we need, is an attitude of gratitude.
And you said it before Oprah, darling.
What?
Attitude of gratitude.
I've been saying it for years.
I know, I was saying, you said it long before Oprah said it.
Maybe I heard it.
No.
I don't know, but anyway, that's what it's about. I don't ask Abba for things, I thank him for things. There's a big difference. If I've got a need, I turn around, I thank him for the result, I thank him for the answer. I don't sit around and say, please, please. It's like I've said before, your kids don't come to you and beg for food. I mean, they do. It's like, what's for dinner? I'm starving. But what I'm saying is, you'll feed them. You'll give them whatever they need. They don't have to beg you until you finally do it. He's a father. Of course he's going to meet our needs.
And some of our wants.
Oh yeah, a lot of our wants. It's amazing how many wants he takes care of. I didn't even know some of them wants.
The other day, Abigail, she was praying for more firewood.
All right.
And I'd been out the back putting some pine cones up for her, and there was a couple of workers out there building the fence, and came up and asked me what I was doing, and so I was giving this pine cones for Abigail. And then the next thing he says, oh, I've got a whole lot of dry wood. I'll bring it over tomorrow. Abigail will want it. And so it was just, an answer to a prayer.
And that's what it says in there, before we even think it out. He's already solved the problem.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's simple. If we need firewood, he'll knock a tree over in the night. Gonna like it. But yeah, he does, and it's amazing how many times he meets our wants.
Yes.
I think I said it before, when I was very young, redeemed, I was working in Radio Rema, and I was having a real pity party one day about I didn't have my clothes, and I didn't have this, and I didn't have shoes, and my shirts, and everything was wearing out. And anyway, the next morning there was a big box just sitting inside the office. I had no idea who put it there or anything. And I went down there, and just being nosy, I thought, oh, maybe it's something for the studio. And I just picked the lid up. And this box was full of expensive suits, expensive shirts, shoes and dresses, women's shoes. I thought, oh, this is interesting. I think I'll just try one of these jackets on. And it was like it had been tailor-made. It's like I've been to the tailors and they delivered the suits. And the shirt was the perfect size, the ties that were in there, the shoes were a perfect size, the dresses were a perfect size for Pamela, and so were the shoes. And the funniest thing is, a couple of months later, we were at some gathering somewhere for Radio Rema. And this Dutch friend that I got called Van Oort, I forgot his first name. John Van Oort came across. They said, my wife and I were just looking. They said, we couldn't believe it. It was like looking at us 20 years ago. He said, we saw this couple come in and it was us 20 years ago walking into the room. Apparently there were his suits, her dresses, his shoes, all of those things. But they were just so blessed. He just said, I was tossing out the wardrobe and I was going to take it to the op shop, and the Lord said, take it into Rima and put it on the floor. Why? Because I'd had a pity party the day before. Guess how small I felt? It's like, you want clothes? I'll give you clothes. There must have been 5 or 6 suits, and half a dozen dresses, shoes and everything. And that kept us going for the whole time we were at Rima.
Yeah, for years.
Yeah. I hadn't asked him for them, I just got uptight. He knew what I needed.
Yeah.
Were they the latest fashion? No, but there were great suits and there were great clothes. And he's always done it with cars and things like that. If I've got a need, I just turn and say, I thank you for the answer. What he doesn't like is when you give him choices. I had to learn that very early on when I first got started, and I'd say, well, is it this or is it that? Not a word. And after about 3 or 4 days, he'd turn around and say, don't give me choices, it might not be that or that. And I had to learn to stop giving him choices and saying, well, you know, can you please give me this or can you please give me that? And in the end, and now I just turn around and say, I'm just happy, I just trust you for the answer. I just trust you for what I need, not what I think I want. A miracle is something that he can do that I can't. He makes a way where there is no way. And he'll often do it through a doctor, through a surgeon. So don't go down that route. Often he works through other people. And he'll work through their hands, he'll work through their medication. The thing we are really blessed about in this nation, we probably take too much, but at the end of the day, we have access to every kind of medication we could need. And we have access to it at very good prices compared to overseas, believe me.
Yeah.
I got to the stage where I objected to paying money for medication at one stage, and he turned around and said, but what if there weren't any there to buy? The blessing is that they're available, no matter what the price. It's like the piece of cork thing I've used many times before. If I held up a piece of cork and said, who'll give me 5,000 for this? You'd say, yeah, right. I'll give you 5 cents. If I offered you that same piece of cork when you were drowning, how much would it be worth to you?
In life.
You'd pay the 5,000 gladly. It's circumstances.
Cork for the boat. To put in where the hole is that's leaking.
Yes.
That's what you mean.
Yes. Often people look to a person on a platform or a stage, at a meeting, instead of at him. Not a good idea. And then they wonder why only limited or no results occur. When I find that there are only limited or no results occur, I think, well, Yeshua's obviously not there. Because where he is, everybody gets healed. Where he is, everybody gets their needs met. So there's obviously a breakdown in communication there somewhere. I had to pray for so many people that have been to meetings for years and got prayed for to be healed, and they haven't. And they've been told to go away because they didn't have enough faith. It was their fault because they didn't have enough faith. And they become extremely upset, extremely bitter, and they get to the stage where they don't want to go near meetings anymore. You know, they don't want to embarrass themselves. They've given up, they've got no hope. And you just need to take that harshness away and just pray for them and find out what the blockage is, why there's a problem that's either with them or, but 9 times out of 10 it's with the person who's been praying for them. Because they just do their thing and make it up as they go along instead of asking him. In that situation, if they'd asked him what the problem was and did they want them to pray for them, how he wanted them to pray for them, they wouldn't be in that situation.
Is it also in the situation where the person who needs, say, the healing has more faith in the person and not in God? Like,
yeah,
they focus more on the...
That's exactly right. That's what stops it a lot of the time. That's what blocks it. Yeah. And their faith is in the miracle and not the miracle giver. And they want something that they want, and it's not necessarily what Yahweh wants to happen in that situation. It's about our heart attitude. Who or what is our trust in? Is my trust in me? Is it in some evangelists because there's been big notices everywhere saying the big guys coming to town? Is it that I've decided that this is the miracle I want, and therefore I'm believing for it? Or am I looking to him, and I'll trust him whether or not it happens? If it doesn't happen, I'll still trust him. If it does happen, I'll still trust him. Is it in the author of the miracle or the miracle itself? Many are devastated because they don't get what they demanded. And there's the key. Did Yahweh promise them in the first place? Did he say to them, I'm going to do this for you? Probably not. Or did they just assume that that was what was going to happen? And they'll say, but we fasted and we prayed. But for some people, what they've done is given them a shopping list combined with a hunger strike. To a lot of people, fasting is just a hunger strike until they get what they want. I'm going to fast until this healing comes. That's a hunger strike. The right heart attitude is crucial to be able to hear from him at the right time and in the right place. Have the doctors given up on them? Have they said there's nothing else we can do for you? Always a good starting point. Or they say, we don't know what the problem is. I've found from experience that desperation is a major key to healing. People say, oh, how come it's only the weak and desperate that get redeemed, and it's only the weak and the desperate that get healed? That's why they get redeemed, and that's why they get healed. Because they're not put themselves, they turn around and put themselves to one side and bow the knee. Yeah. It's a major key to healing, redemption, obedience, and many other unresolved issues in our lives. When we just cry out to him. You know the most effective prayer in here? What's the most effective prayer?
Help.
The most effective prayer in this sometimes is, help. You haven't got a solution. You haven't got, you don't know. You don't even know what the problem is. You don't even know, you've got no idea how to fix it. So you just basically bow the knee and go to him. It's the shortest prayer in the book. It's the most effective. No one can tell me that miracles don't happen. I've observed and experienced far too many of them on a daily basis for anybody to try and tell me that. It's the same with healing. And what I've found as well is often people are only released to pray for people after experiencing their own healing. It's amazing how many people pray for people with cancer who've been prayed for and healed from cancer. The minute they've been healed, suddenly they've got this ministry and they pray for other people. It's a kingdom principle. If you've received something, you can give it. If you haven't received something, you've got nothing to give. Doesn't mean I have to get cancer to be able to pray for people with cancer, but I'm talking about there are specific areas like that where people who've been prayed for something and received a healing seem to have a very strong anointing in that area. So they've experienced their own healing and they've experienced their own miracle. Why? Because they've received and know he heals. It's not theory anymore. There's a big difference when it goes from theory to knowing. We're not supposed to be believers, we're supposed to be knowers. Because they've received and they have something that they can pass on to others. You often find that some of the best people to pray for people are people who've had real issues and problems in their lives. Why? Because they have empathy. I've said it before. Years ago we went to Bible College in New Zealand, we used to spend quite a bit of time there. And this guy came from Africa and they just had their graduation. And they were so proud they had their diplomas. And I asked most of them what they were going to do and they said, oh, go home. I said, but you spent 3 years here, you've got this diploma, aren't you going overseas? Oh no, I'm going to go home and be a hairdresser or whatever, you know. Anyway, but this guy turned around to him, just when they were all proud, and said, right, you can rip them up. I don't want to know, I don't want to see it. If you come to see me, to come on the mission field in Africa, I only want to see one thing, and that's a broken heart. And what he said to them is, it takes a broken heart to reach a broken world. And I've never forgotten that. That's what it takes. To reach broken people and a broken world requires a broken heart. It has to have happened in your life at some stage to have the empathy, to go out there and minister with them and not to them. That's why I always say we never pray for people, we only pray with people. It's a big difference. Healings and miracles are spiritual responses to real practical issues. It's not some airy-fairy spiritual thing that's up there. Ooh. Healings and miracles are a spiritual response to a practical issue, to a practical need. Moshe and Israel experienced daily miracles. Why did they experience daily miracles in the wilderness and we don't? Because their life depended on it. If they didn't get their daily miracles, they didn't survive. And it's only when you come to that stage you will see miracles and healings on a scale that you've never experienced before. If you are totally dependent on Him for everything. A friend who was a GP when he first got redeemed, he came to me one day and he said, "I'm jealous." I said, "What?" I'd been at Rima a few months then. And Robbie turned around to me and said, "I'm jealous of you." And I said, "Why?" He said, "I'm a GP. I'm always going to be able to get locum work. I'm always going to have money in the bank. I'm never going to have any great needs and everything else." He said, "But you are totally dependent on Him for everything." And he said, "And I'm jealous." Isn't that amazing? It blew me away at the time. When you are totally and absolutely dependent on Him on a day-by-day basis, and you have that relationship with Him, you will be amazed how many miracles and healings take place. You'll be amazed how many people you pray for, because even though you've got a great need, the best way to deal with a great need is to give as much as you can of what you've got. Who was it he praised in the temple? All the guys coming in and throwing big bags of money in the temple taxes. It was one old woman with this tiny, the widow's, that's why they called it the widow's mite, because it was the smallest coin. It was like a 5-cent piece. And she gave that, and he said, "Yeah." But they gave, and they still had plenty. She gave, and that was the last coin. That was everything. She gave everything. So they had daily miracles in the wilderness because their life depended on them. How about you? Do you have enough trust? Are you willing to go overboard when you're called? People say, "Yeah, but he sank under the waves." Yeah, but he still went overboard first. It was a lesson. He wasn't meant to succeed. He was meant to learn something. But the point was, when he was called to come out of the boat, he did.
And he did actually stand on the water.
He did.
Yes.
And that's what people forget about.
Yeah.
They talk about him sinking, but they forget that he did actually stand on the water. You show me somebody else that's done that.
When he got
Isn't that
fearful.
Yeah.
It's when he got fearful.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
And this is it. When we're in a situation, when we look to Him, we're fine. When we look at the problem, we sink.
It wasn't having that. He came to South Africa and he water.
Yes.
Because his life was so pretty. Maybe 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
2 things I want to say. First, to encourage you, well, I had a miracle last week. Woke up, my body was fine, but suddenly I was in excruciating pain and I was bleeding from the kidneys. It was obvious that I had a serious problem. But I was going to my little group with Pam and Jet know about it, my little group of all the old men. And
They probably all went club.
ranging from 97 down. But anyway, they could see I was in incredible discomfort. I told them, "Oh, don't worry about me. I'm going to the doctor after the meeting." They said, "No, we'll pray for you." So they did. They gathered around me and they prayed. We won't know whose prayers were answered or whether it was just like Jeff was saying, my trust and my belief. But you're right, Jeff. It's these things happen to build up everyone's
It
faith,
does.
trust,
Yeah.
expectancy.
Yep.
Because I said
Hope.
to the Lord, "Why?" And He said it builds up faith and trust. But
Yep.
I went to the doctor. There was evidence that there was a problem. I got my medication, but something within me said no. You won't be able to say there's a miracle. You won't be able to say there's been a miraculous healing if you take one of these things. So I didn't. And I got a phone call from and the doctor saw there was leukocytes, blood. I really was not well. But when they got the results back from the lab, guess what? They said there's nothing in it. And I hadn't even taken anything. And the other thing I wanted to say, now watch this, you guys. This is what Jeff said, looking to him. I went to a meeting over at Welcome Bay, and this visiting person from Malaysia showed a DVD of a chicken. Now, I'll come out and show you, because it's quite hilarious in some ways. And apparently some kids gave their dads some chickens for his Father's Day present. But they discovered in playing with these fowls that you can hold their legs, you can do whatever you want, move them this way, that way, but the head of the chicken, if you move the body up, down, sideways like this, the head, honestly Jeff, it's an amazing DVD, you should try and find it. The head of the fowl stays exactly where its head was pointing when it started to have its body underneath move. The head bent, it dipped, up, down, the head was dead straight. And that's a good parable, like Jeff was saying, keep your eyes fixed firmly on him. Keep the head, you mustn't lose sight of that. It was amazing. Forget about being tossed around by storms.
That's right.
Just remember you're a chicken, but keep your head or your eyes.
So if somebody tells you you've gone overboard, take it as a compliment. Years ago, that's exactly what happened. Somebody told me I've gone overboard, and I was put down by it. And then I was praying, and I had to turn around and said, "Yeah, you have. Well, I asked you to." And it's great. So you can't give what you haven't received. So unless you get a green light from head office and exact instructions, often in conjunction with other people, this is why we need other people with other giftings within ministry. Because often he'll put 2 or 3 people together, and one will come up with one thing, and one will come up with something else, and between the 3, you'll come up with a complete solution. And that's what I've said before as well. Never pray for something you're not willing to be part of the answer for. And it sounds easy, but you find yourself in situations, you'll find it can be quite daunting at times. Particularly if somebody's got a really big need, and you don't know, you have to accept that before you pray.
May I share something that
sure.
happened about healings?
Yes.
Last week we went to pool Bailey's, and George said, "Oh, have a look, this is like the healing pool in Jerusalem."
Yeah.
Because of water, but
Sure. Yeah.
And I said, "Okay, that's fine." And the next week we had a Wednesday home group, and there was a friend. He said, "Henry, I feel the Lord is saying to you, stir up the water." And I know, stir up waters. And then now I there's a confirmation that probably I have to pray for someone for healing. There was a guy in my workplace. On Monday, actually, I got an Israeli flag with on the wall, and people came and they said, "Henry, there's a people in the company they are offended by the flag." So I said, "Why they are offended? Why they don't talk to me about it?" Anyway, so there was lots of things going on, and I said, "Okay, I want to put it down." And then I changed my mind. I said, "Sorry, you have to go to the boss." And when he will say to me, "You have to put it down," I will ask him why, but I don't want to put the flag down. So the flag was there, and then this guy who's got he had an accident 30 years ago is Al-Qatar, and he just started to walk the last 2 weeks because he needs a surgery, and I felt that maybe this is the person I have to pray for. So I said, "Can I pray for you?" And I prayed, and actually I felt that Lord was healing. And I was like, wow, and next day he was totally changed, From the moment I don't have any pain, and I'm going for the last 6 days before the surgery. So what I pray that there will be 100% healing, and actually what happened, the disc, when he fell over when he was 15 years old, moved 15 millimeters of the, up, and he's got bad problems, and he's on the painkillers. So this happened on Monday. So I'm very excited, but I was thinking to share later, but I believe that he was totally healed.
Yeah.
The report will be on 28th of this month that there's nothing wrong
Yeah.
with his pain.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, we all join together and say,
Thank you.
Oh, it's like when I was a young child, apparently I spent most of my days in hospital because I was a consistently sick child. Now, when I get the flu and I'm sick in bed, you know, I always say to my wife, I'll be fine tomorrow. You know, even though flus usually take 3 days and the next day I'm usually, you know, I'm right as rain.
But I just want to say, like, exactly what you said, that's always, like, people can confirm to you that
Yes.
God wants to do something. Otherwise, I wouldn't step,
yeah.
you know, first I pray for the faith, and I say, okay,
Yeah.
Lord, I want to do it, I believe that this is, you show me the, you know, through confirmation that you want to heal someone. Then I step up, you know, in the faith, but we can't just go to hospital and, you know,
Yeah.
rise up to dead, you know, like, every day.
I think I told you before about a friend of mine who was an evangelist, and he was in India for the first time. And this guy, you know, was full of faith, he was full, and he was praying for this whole line of people, and he prayed for a blind guy. And he just, you know, came along and prayed for this blind guy and then moved on. And as he moved on to the next person, he had this voice saying, I can see! He said, you can't, can you? You know, it's not about our trust and faith.
Yeah.
He thought he had it until that happened. And he was astonished because it was his first real miracle.
Is the flag still
The
there?
flag is still there.
The flag is still there, of course
It's
it
still
is.
there because now people are talking what's happened because he's sharing.
Yeah.
You know, that I pray and he's sharing with his wife
Yeah.
and they're excited. But I want to, you know, the
Yeah,
healing
wait for it to become
because
further.
God wants to touch his
Yeah,
heart.
that's right.
The healing
And we
wants
need
to
those-
open for you know, the gospel.
Again, I talked about a friend that he had a fish and chip shop in Tokoroa. And he put up this, he had somebody paint this thing, it must have been about 10 feet by 6 feet, for painting of Yeshua down by the lake, casting out the nets and everything else like that. And it had a scripture along the bottom, I can't remember what it was. And the woman next door was absolutely incensed. She was the leader of the local Chamber of Commerce. And she came in and she just ripped him to shreds and said, you know, you're an idiot, you're a fool, you won't last 5 seconds, you know, you'll be out of here in a year. And he turned around to her and he said, if I land up here in a year, that's fine, he said, but that'll be the last. She told him to get rid of it. He said, when I come out of here, that'll be the last thing on my shoulder when I leave.
Yeah.
What was it? 2 years later?
No, about a year.
About a year later, she was bankrupt. And she had to leave her shop. Guess what the shop is now? Christian bookstore.
This is in Tokoroa.
Tokoroa, yeah.
It's funny.
But he did the same thing. He got all the fish off the boats, and what he would do is he would give all his best fish, he'd sell all his best fish to the other people that he supplied. And then whatever was left, he would use in his, he had 2 or 3 fish and chip shops because he was getting so popular. And people would come and say, oh, yours is the best fish in town. This is why we come to you because you have the best fish and we wouldn't go anywhere else. And yet he knew he'd given all his best fish to all these other guys. But the Lord blessed him. Started out with 1 shop and went to 3. And that painting was still on the wall the last time I saw it. I'm not sure if it's still there.
No, I don't, I think,
I think he's gone, but I guarantee the last thing out of that shop would have been the painting.
yeah, I think his shop's moved, yeah.
But we need to get to the stage where we expect these things
Yeah.
on a daily basis. It's our inheritance. Doesn't mean we're to go looking for it to make everything signs and wonders. So many people spend their whole time going to meetings because they want to see healings and signs and wonders. It's not what it's all about.
No.
That's something that comes out of our relationship with Him, and that's something that comes out of our everyday walk. We don't need to go looking for it. There's enough out there. So you can't give what you've received unless you get a green light and exact instructions, often in conjunction with other team members. Do not just react to the problem and offer false hope. It's so easy when you see somebody in desperate need to say something to them because you want to comfort them. What you're actually doing is offering them false hope unless you first heard it from Him. The hardest thing is when He turns around and tells you to tell them to let them go. If it's another family member or something like that. And obviously it's hard for them to receive because that's not what they want to hear. They want to hear they're going to be healed. And sometimes he says, I want you to comfort them and tell them to let them go. And 9 times out of 10, the person themselves actually want to be home with him. Who says this is better than being with him? I remember talking to somebody years ago, and I said, I don't fear death. Of course you do. I said, no. I said, for me, it's not an issue. For me, I'd be just as happy to be at home with him as here. There is no fear anymore. It's not a problem for me. Obviously, I want to be here for my loved ones, but at the end of the day, whether I'm here or whether I'm at home with him, what's the fear?
It's like that saying, fear he who can take your soul and not your life.
Yeah.
So, I think that's how it goes.
My spirit is mine to give. Nobody can take it from me. They can take my life. They can take the flesh. They can't take the spirit. That's mine to give.
I have to admit that I would like to wear some new shoes.
Tomorrow? Don't save them for a rainy day.
I need a few weeks to wear it.
Have a whole week of wearing everything you haven't worn for a long time and getting everything out of the cupboards that you haven't used for a long time. So, people are often desperate for you to say what they want to hear. Don't do it. Whatever you do, don't do it. Ever. Only respond to what Yahweh tells you to. I've included some useful scriptures, but now we need to get practical and pray for one another. Either long distance or on the spot, 1-to-1. So next week we'll be exploring Shamash, the servants. So again, it's like every ministry. We should all be able to pray for healing. We should all be able to pray for miracles. But there is a ministry where those two things are absolutely crucial and part of the whole thing. And usually what I find is the person that Yahweh endows with that as a ministry are people that go into desperate situations. It's not just something they just sit in the local area and just whenever it happens. He usually sends them into extreme areas with extreme needs. Often it's India, China, third world countries, where there are extreme needs, and the thing they need the most is a miracle. And they need healing. And out of that comes redemption. Out of that changes the whole spiritual atmosphere of the place. When Yeshua came, he went about doing healing and performing miracles. Not so people could pat him on the back and say, wasn't that great? Got a meeting last night. He went around doing it because out of that they got hope and they got trust and they got redeemed. So, how many people think they've got that particular ministry, that particular gifting? And I don't just mean pray for everybody, because we all have to pray for everybody. We should all pray for miracles. We should all expect miracles, and we should all pray for healing. But some of you will actually have a specific ministry in the area of healing and miracles. And like I say, the two aren't necessarily the same thing. Nobody?